15, I knew I wanted to be an escort one day. Shocking, I know. I saw the show Secret Diary of a Call Girl, and having grown up poor, it basically depicted the version of the life I wished I was living in every way. So at 18, I stepped into a brothel for the first time, and my journey into the adult industry began. Now, I say this with love, but 15-year-old me was kind of dumb, and basically all the notions I had about being an escort were ill-founded and, of course, unresearched. So today at 30, after having been in the industry for 12 years, I've got some advice to share, which I sure as shit wish I had known back then. If you're thinking of becoming an escort, I suggest you listen up. If you're currently escorting, then you may learn some nuggets of wisdom, and I wonder if you agree with me. Also, head on over to escortacademy.co if right now you're struggling to grow your income. You can hear the strategies that escorts just like you are using to double and triple the money that they make. And lastly, if you're a civilian just curious about the happenings of the ever so mysterious adult industry world, then I hope you enjoy, because I'm going to be busting some of the common myths people have about escorts as I go. So let's dive right in. Number one is it's just a job and it ain't always glamorous. Here is Belle de Jour on Secret Diary of a Call Girl, shopping and being hot and just living her best life. Now here's the reality of escorting. Sitting alone in a room waiting for a potential client to call. Let me run you through what being an escort actually consists of. Number one, responding to inquiries on your phone. Number two, being consistently available for bookings which may or may not come through at any time. And number three, bumping your ads regularly on escort advertising platforms, so you remain at the top of the heap of escorts available in the hopes of standing out. Number four, doing actual bookings with clients, most of which are 1 hour stints of intimacy with a random person you've likely never met before. And that is it. Escorting is basically a combination of admin, doing nothing so you're available, and being intimate with strangers. Now, there is a place for glamour and luxury experiences, and they can and do occur, obviously, but it is not the majority of the job for the majority of people. I absolutely had some incredible experiences as an escort, like being flown to private 5-star hotel openings. But if I were to quantify the amount of time those experiences accounted for throughout a 6-year career, it would be small. Looking gorgeous and beautifying all day is also not a primary factor of the job, at least not if you want to be successful. If, as an escort, you're spending a lot of time, and therefore likely a lot of money too, beautifying, that's fine, but you're probably losing clients due to your unavailability. Clients who really don't care that much about whether you've got the latest hair extensions or not. Before I worked as a personal trainer, I saw fitness influencers, and I thought the job would be all about glowing with health and positivity, inspiring and uplifting like-minded women, and encouraging them to become the best version of themselves, which of course I assumed they'd be motivated and excited for. But that's not actually what happened. When I was a PT, my life was about consistently prospecting for new clients who were more likely to be unhealthy and unfit and demotivated, converting them, so selling, and taking relatively unfit people through basic exercise programs, and then waking up and doing it all over again the very next day. A similar bubble popped for me when I became an escort. If you want to do this job just because you want a glamorous life, then you're probably barking up the wrong tree. Finally, while some clients will want to spend social time with you at dinner or out and about, most clients won't, because for them, their time with you is private. It's a secret. They don't want to be gallivanting around in public with a paid escort, particularly if they're married or if they're significantly older than you, and sometimes they are. Number two is stigma will not be your biggest problem. So I fretted a lot about the impact of stigma, societal conventions before starting in the industry. I worried about people finding out. I was also scared of what potential romantic partners would think. I didn't want most of the people in my life at the time to know. And navigating things like tax returns certainly became much harder. But none of these things were my biggest problem. Financial inconsistency was. Not only is escorting just a job where you need to do a small set of mundane tasks every day to make money, it's also basically cold commission only sales with no recurring income. Because first and foremost, escorting is self-employment. There are no sick days, paid leave, no set salary. Second, our income mostly comes from one-off transactions, with individual clients paying per meet. Very rarely do we have clients who have ongoing fixed payment arrangements where we can rely on a certain amount of money coming through the door. And then even when those arrangements do happen, there's no way to keep a client to them. It's hardly like we have legally binding agreements with cancellation terms, notice periods, stuff like that. So the income is extremely erratic, and this is really stressful and difficult for most people, including myself. You can make $20,000 in a week and then make nothing for the next 2 weeks. It takes effort to adapt to living this way, and a significant focus focus on developing good financial habits. The best antidote is becoming very good at what you do so that clients want to come back. Attracting clients who are affluent enough to afford seeing escorts regularly, and then building up a solid book of repeat clients. And these things all take time. And so escorting really isn't the get-rich-quick scheme that many people think it is. You can make a lot of money fast, but it can stop just as quickly. If your plan for this job is to stack cash and get ahead financially, it will take longer than you think because you need to account for all the weeks you make nothing and the time it takes you to flatten out the financial dips by having repeat clients. Number 3 is being hot isn't enough. Well, look. It doesn't hurt to be hot, that's for sure. But because there are an endless sea of other hot women prepared to do this job, it is not as big of an advantage as you might think. Also, beauty really is in the eye of the beholder. It might surprise you to learn that MILF, Mum I'd Like to You Know What, is one of the most popular escort categories. Now, starting out, I would have assumed being younger was better, but age has massive financial perks too. If you get into this job relying on your appearance alone, you will fail fast. Inconsistent, erratic income is what pushes a lot of people out of the industry, and building repeat clientele is one of the few ways to solve it. So if you're hot, but you perform a subpar service in the room, clients just won't come back. There are just too many options. The industry grows literally every day, with more and more people willing to do what you do, but for less. A first-time client might be wowed by Victoria's Secret level looks, but he's not going to stay wowed long if that person is a cold fish in the room. And because he can find another just as hot or hotter escort in 5 seconds, he'll be out the door and scrolling through all the other options he now likely wishes he'd booked. Number 5, $5,000 a week is really easy to spend. I was making less than $1,000 a week in my civilian job when I first ever started escorting, which back then was below the average Australian salary of about $52,000 at the time. So $5,000 in a week was an inconceivable and stupid amount of money to me. And I also grew up really poor. I'd only ever known life living in survival mode. If you had told me back then that $5,000 in a week wasn't enough, I would have flat out just not believed you. Well, I was wrong, and I will explain why. When you make $5,000 in a week, especially coming from nothing, you feel like it's so much it just won't ever run out, and weirdly you become convinced that next week you'll do it again. But then next week rolls around and you get your period, or all your pre-bookings cancel, or you're sick, and so your earnings go down to zilch. Then the next week happens and something occurs again. So $5,000 in 7 days quickly becomes $5,000 in 30 days, which are two really different financial scenarios. The former equaling $260,000 in a year, and the latter equaling $60,000 in a year. My experience is that escorts overestimate what they earn in a year by focusing on and then reminiscing on their one standout week, which they then extrapolate out to be their weekly annual income. And they underestimate what they spend by focusing on only their fixed overheads like rent and conveniently forgetting about all the non-fixed spending they engage with, which typically goes up when you hold a large amount of cash. Another problem is when you make 5K fast, your perception of the value of your time becomes warped. So you see something for 2K and you think, I can make that in 2 hours. When in actual fact, you don't make it in 2 hours. You make it across the 25 hours you spend in all work activities you engage in a week in order to secure one booking at all. $2,000 across 25 hours is actually $80 an hour, as opposed to $1,000 an hour. So when you spend $2,000, you're spending 25 hours of time, not 2 hours of time. All this to say, $5,000 isn't what you think. And sadly, I learned that the hard way when after 3 years, I realized I had nothing to show financially for my efforts. And that was a really painful day. Number 5, your skills are transferable. To every adult industry worker who genuinely wants to be in the industry for a long term, good for you. The majority of escorts I've ever spoken to don't fit into this category for a range of reasons. Sometimes simply due to the laborious nature of the job. It is hard work physically to be intimate for a living. Escorting is akin to professional athleticism, and your body has an expiry date. But some people also get stuck unwillingly in the industry because they think it's all that they can do. If it's all you've ever known, then this is a totally understandable perspective. At 25, after 7 years in the industry, I too held this self-limiting belief. But it's wrong. It is just plain wrong, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise, because your skills are valuable and transferable. At 25, I started a totally unrelated business in the corporate field, and I sold it 2 years later to a private equity firm in an 8-figure deal, using all the non-physical skills I learned as an escort. So let's list them, shall we? Perseverance. Escorting and all self-employment is hard, and obstacles are normal. The escorts I've known hold unusually high levels of perseverance in the face of challenges. If I didn't have the skill of perseverance to rely upon, which I built as an escort, I never would have succeeded in my corporate venture. Then there's time management and accountability. It is hard to be successful at anything when you can't self-manage your time or hold yourself accountable to plans. When you're an escort, there is no boss and no one telling you to get up in the morning. You eat what you kill, so to speak. So if you can't motivate yourself to get up and go, you end up back in a civilian job being told what to do for a living. Next, there's sales and marketing. Because I've explained that being hot isn't enough to be an escort, you actually need to learn how to sell your service and market to a wide variety of people in a crowded market in order to make money. Sales and marketing are necessary for any business to make any money at all. Once you learn how to sell, you can take it into any business and be successful. Communication. Communication skills are at the core of all successful human interaction, and all businesses, even modern AI-driven businesses, need to deal some way with people, given it's people who choose to buy and hand over their hard-earned money. Because from the age of 18, I was very used to being in a room with a total stranger, responsible for communicating with them in a way which made them feel comfortable, at ease, and in a way which subtly influenced them to behave in a compliant manner. I was a pro at communicating with all kinds of people in any kind of setting. And you just can't get that from a book. So there's just a few skills to name. Today I work with escorts who are starting businesses of all types, from web design agencies to medical clinics to beauty businesses. Something that hurts my heart most is hearing the phrase, "I'm stuck in this industry, it's all I'm good at." Because it's just not true. Your skills are always transferable, never forget that. 6, people have the right to disagree with your choices. Now, by the time I was 21, I was very entrenched in the industry. I had surrounded myself with mostly industry-only friends. I'd only dated men who knew what I did and were supportive. And to be honest, I probably looked down pretty lowly on any what I considered closed-minded individual who wasn't free-thinking enough to agree with adult work. But in hindsight, this was a defense mechanism that I wielded of being judgmental of those who I perceived opposed me and my life choices. And it was immature, really, and it didn't serve me. I've encountered many self-defensive attitudes like mine during my time engaging with fellow workers, from self-righteousness to verbal combativeness to downright abuse and aggression of people who don't agree with them. None of these people seem very happy or at peace to me. And the irony is, most are fighting for the right to have their own opinion and make their own choices, while simultaneously condemning others who are simply also exercising that right. Now, don't get me wrong, stigma shapes the laws which are damaging and dangerous for escorts in many places of the world, and I truly hope that they change fast. Thankfully, some of them already have, and I truly believe that they will continue to over time. But in my experience, education and communication are what best lead to long-term change. And at the very least, living in a state of anger just doesn't feel good, right? So today, I exercise gratitude for living in a world where people have a right to their own opinions, even when they oppose my own. I listen openly to others, knowing I might learn something new and have the opportunity to reorient my thinking. I also develop internal boundaries, so I'm less affected by the opinions of others. I educate non-industry people by sharing my experiences and giving them a more fulsome view of a world that they likely know nothing about practically, and whose views are largely based on unquestioned societal convention. And I also support and uplift fellow industry workers by helping them in any way I can. Lastly, I strive to surround myself with people who practice tolerance and compassion for all human choices. In a previous video I made called 8 Things I Wish I Knew Before I Became an Escort, it was over 5 years ago, I said surround yourself with like-minded people. And I meant that. That was useful at the time and to a point. It certainly protected me from exposure to negativity and criticism, particularly when I was younger and understandably more sensitive to such things. But I have found now that seeking out people who practice tolerance and compassion above those who simply agree with me to be a more beneficial long-term strategy. Some close people in my life actually do not hold the same views that I have on sex work, but we can respectfully disagree and we can have a great relationship along the way. 7, excitement is not your friend. If you are escorting to secure your financial freedom, the name of the game is consistency. Boring, mundane, repetitive, predictable consistency. Like many 18-year-olds at the start of my career, I was very captivated by the allure of exciting new experiences, such as famous or high status clients, big booking opportunities, overseas trips. These things usually took me away from consistency, and they sometimes cost me more money than they actually made me. Were they nice? Yes. but they didn't lead most of the time to long-term financial growth and stability. Want to know what does? Just getting up at the same time every day, responding to all inquiries religiously, having ample availability and sitting waiting for bookings even when it's been quiet all day, because you never know when a big booking might come in at like 8 p.m. Following up with every single regular routinely, providing a 5-star booking experience even for the 30-minute clients. The grind, as it's often referred to, is romanticized as this inspiring series of events which unfolds like this rocky cutscene, but in actual fact it looks more like this: continuous boredom or misery with occasional minor shifts upwards which eventually lead to success. And one of the traits I've observed about all successful people is that they're good at grinding. Most of the time it's not practically hard. It just consists of doing the same shit you know how to do continuously. But people are addicted to excitement, and so they can't stick to it. The sooner you see the grind for what it is and you stop romanticizing it, the sooner you'll be able to accept and live in reality. Because success is born of repetitive, continuous actions which are neither exciting or spontaneous, but they do reliably produce results. 8. Make every client feel like a VIP. My business transformed entirely when I started treating every client, regardless of their first text, dollar spend, or booking length, like they were the most important client I had ever had. In fact, I stopped even seeing them as clients and started treating them as I would like to be treated for any 5-star luxurious experience that I was indulging in. Without changing anything else about my service or my physical appearance, things took off when I started doing that. I had clients coming back routinely. I got more and more reviews. I increased my rates and regulars chose to pay more rather than looking for someone else. Because we are willingly, publicly advertising ourselves in a very unique way for all the world to see, we unfortunately will attract some pretty wild behaviors and a fair share of crazies. It's easy as a result of that to become jaded by what is crappy treatment. But if you aren't careful, it will damage your entire business if it results in you treating the real authentic clients in a way that they don't want to be treated. For some clients, when they're contacting you, it's to spend the money they've spent months saving, to have the one intimate experience they're likely to have for months or even years. Imagine if you had waited like a year to save up all your pennies to go to this fabulous high-end spa that you'd not be able to afford to go to again anytime soon. And imagine if when you engage with them, they treated you with cold hostility and focused only on the commercial arrangements surrounding the experience. It would be unprofessional at best and totally soul-destroying at worst. So treat every client and potential client like a VIP, and modify that approach only if they demonstrate that they do not deserve that VIP treatment, by simply discontinuing contact with them. Being rude to them will only put you in a bad frame of mind for the next sincere client, which you'll then of course lose. 9. Know the difference between commercial intimacy and real intimacy. What clients really want when they engage in escort services is intimacy. It is the core human need driving their behavior. But commercial intimacy is very different to real intimacy. And I didn't get that at 18, and so I was constantly blurring lines in the pursuit of building my business, naively, which ultimately led to a loss of income. And it's a mistake that I see repeated all the time by my colleagues. It's of course totally understandable, given I haven't yet seen a book on commercial versus real intimacy. So it's something that you really do learn on the job. It's also tricky because you will get more and better clients if you sell the promise of real intimacy, but you'll lose them if you don't then deliver commercial intimacy. Clients, of course, also aren't typically consciously aware of this, so we are the ones responsible for distinguishing between the two. Now, the key difference between real intimacy and commercial intimacy lies in boundaries and expectations. Real intimacy is built on mutual emotional investment, vulnerability, and a connection that grows naturally over time, like a couple sharing personal struggles and dreams. Whereas commercial intimacy, on the other hand, is a curated connection. It's defined by clear boundaries and is designed to meet the client's needs, such as offering companionship or an emotional escape within a professional context. Now, both are genuine in their own way, but they operate with different goals and limitations. The problem I used to have, and which many escorts and clients fall prey to, was clarifying and enforcing boundaries, like sticking to booking times or sharing personal information like my real name. When lines become blurred, clients start to think that you really like them, and their behavior changes, usually financially, meaning that over time you earn less and you lose them entirely when they realize they are in fact just a client, with the entire exercise being really emotionally draining for both parties along the way. So in short, you want to set and keep to boundaries because you'll make more as well as provide a calmer experience for all along the way. 10. Choose financial independence over financial abundance. Choosing financial independence over financial abundance is one of the most empowering decisions an escort can make. It is really tempting to rely on a whale client who offers significant financial support. The allure of quick, abundant wealth from one person seems like an easy path. However, this strategy creates vulnerability as your income becomes entirely dependent on their continued support. Should that client move on, face financial issues of their own, or change their priorities, your stability will vanish overnight. And this almost always happens in my experience. If you instead focus your energy on building a business that consistently attracts new clients, though it may require more effort, it lays the foundation for true financial independence, which is what most of us really get into this job to achieve in the first place. So even though it isn't as sexy, diversifying your client base and aiming to get more clients who each spend a more modest amount with you versus one super spender puts you in control. Your business thrives on your ability to maintain consistent standards and attract a steady flow of opportunities, not the whims of one individual. And 11, invest in business, not beauty skills. Many escorts, myself included, often think they need to focus in the early days on perfecting beauty-related skills, so hair, makeup, styling, believing that these are the keys to success. While personal presentation is important, it is actually business skills that create lasting success in this industry. Escorting operates with the same principles as any business. Advertising to attract clients, generating leads, converting inquiries into bookings, managing customer relationships, and staying on top of admin tasks. Without understanding and mastering these areas, even the best look or practical skill set in the room won't lead to sustainable growth. What makes business skills even more powerful is their adaptability. Because once you build expertise in marketing, sales, and client management, you can then confidently apply those abilities to any other venture inside or outside the industry. This not only secures your financial future, but also broadens your opportunities for long-term success. So investing in business knowledge isn't just about growing as an escort. It's about creating a foundation for a life of independence and freedom, no matter where your journey takes you. And that, my friends, are 11 things which took me over 11 years to learn. I would love to know which point